I was at a bar drinking, of course. That's where you'll find me at most conferences. After hours, sometimes during. I'm just kidding, I never said that. Cut that out, all right? I'm just
The
kidding.
moment you ask to cut something out, it shall not be cut out. Hello, what is up? Welcome back to the channel. So, this is the first episode of the DevRel Roundtable. I am actually starting this series because all around me in the community, I see a lot of amazing people turning to become a developer relations person or a developer advocacy or whatever you want to call it, an avocado, I would say. And I am seeing so many cool people do this and I don't actually know anything about it. I am someone who has been for like 15 years being a developer, being a tech director at agencies, but not at a product company. So we've never really needed a developer relations person. And you know what? It's a really valid job nowadays, and I think it's super cool that a lot of senior people go towards this. So, in this episode, I am talking to Domitrius and Tessa from Cloudinary. They are two veteran developer relations people, and I'm just asking whatever is on my chest. I need to learn what this thing is. And so, without further ado, this is episode 1 of the DevRel Roundtable. Let's go! Hello and welcome, Dom and Tessa. How are you?
Wonderful.
That's
See,
what
I didn't know if
hear.
I should answer first because I feel like me and Tessa are just going to be stepping over each other the whole time. So I'm going to let Tessa lead on almost all of these.
We
we
can
go.
be in sync with our answers. We can
could
say go,
try.
we can say 3, 2, 1. Great.
You're gonna owe me a lot of sodas because I'm gonna jinx you a lot.
So you
But
better
I'm
be
great.
kind of in sync because you work at the same company. You do a similar job, right?
I mean, we work together.
In different areas, but
We
similar
overlap.
projects.
Yeah, we overlap a lot. I think that's like one of the misconceptions about DevRel in the first place is that like everybody kind of just makes content and speaks at conferences, and like that's literally 20%, if that, I think of a DevRel's job.
Okay, this is what I want to know because this is part of why we're kind of doing this video, because I honestly don't know much about DevRel, and especially because I'm kind of old school. I'm grown up and at ad agencies doing coding, and for some reason when you do that you feel like that's the real job, but that's bullshit. Obviously there's way more out there. But so what
I did
is it?
UI for 4.5 years, so I totally
Exactly. So
feel
you
that.
kind of like, I've heard people around me saying, okay, I'm just going to jump into being a DevRel. And then I said, yeah, but you don't have any agency experience, which is of course a stupid comment, but I just didn't know. So maybe you guys can elaborate a little bit on what the DevRel actually is.
Yeah, I'll let you take that first,
Sure.
Tessa, and then I'll just
So, so here's the initial issue. Going back like prior to developer relations, you have a developer-driven product, and then you have a marketing team that's specific on marketing that don't really have a face to each person. They're putting out marketing materials to developers, but none of them have developer backgrounds. They don't really take in feedback. They just push out content. So they're really focused on, they're focused on customers and in a way where they're not building any kind of relationship. Developer relations is about building relationships with developers and having a face to each person on the team and taking in that feedback, talking to people, being the face, being a leader in different communities, and just being out there,
So
among
is
a
it
million
like,
other things.
well, yeah, I guess, because what I'm looking at where I work right now, our output to, the community is mostly broadcast, right? We have a new project or do this with
it's all
Headless
announcement based.
Yeah, but there's no interaction whatsoever. So is that maybe the crux of what a DevRel does on top of whatever?
Like to pile on top of what Tessa was saying, like what DevRel really does, in my opinion, is removes friction from the product And
Yep.
that's anywhere, right? Like what you see a lot is the community work. That's us at conferences, in communities giving answers, in forums, wherever you find us. That's what the community sees, and it's understandable why a lot of companies already think like that's just what DevRel does. That's what I'm gonna hire you for, and that's B,
Yeah.
why a lot of community members think like, oh, it's kind of like a customer support thing to them. Like they know that they can DM me or reach out to like get an answer for something, and if I don't have it, I'll find it. But the whole other like dark side of the moon almost is that we also remove friction internally. So not only are we making it so that the developers can use it easily, we're helping try and drive the product towards being something that those developers want. We're helping talk to marketing about the types of content that they want to see. We're helping talk to the executives about the type of direction that the product should be going. Like there's a lot of internal work that goes on alongside all of this content. This content isn't just driven to make you understand the product. It's in a way to kind of receive feedback as candidly as we can and try and shape the product around that feedback. And we build stuff too. Like you always see DevRel building things and small projects and stuff like that. It's because we want to find what sucks about the product too. Like to me, when I first did my interview for Cloudinary, I wasn't like, yo, your product is amazing, I just want to work for it. The first thing I did was find where I thought the product was weak and brought that as like a, hey, if I came on, this is what I would want to help empower. And for me, that was the GraphQL. Like for Cloudinary, there's not much in the GraphQL space.
Oh, yeah,
so
exactly.
I was heavy in Apollo. I loved Apollo at the time. So I actually, and it's in my GitHub, but I have like a wrapper for Cloudinary in GraphQL. So to me, that's what a DevRel does. It's not delivering you all of the hype and the excitement. Like I want to find the things that like suck and make them better. And if we can't make them better, it should be my job to help you find that as a customer, even if that's not our product. Like I think that it's really important to really help the community. Like when you've got strictly product driven people who just don't care about your success, like you're gonna feel that. That's when it becomes marketing. You know what I mean?
So do you feel like to an extent, maybe for you, Tessa, that you at one point might become a referee, I mean, between teams that use the product and maybe your developers who are like, because I've seen this in other companies where basically they release a new piece of software, which is potentially great, but actually it's not, or not yet anyways. It has a cool idea, but then we use this in production on a global scale and it just fails. So my first touch point would be a DevRel where I say, hey, your product is, there's something up here. We can just not make this happen. And kind of, they told me they kind of feel like a referee between the product teams and the testers. And so do you guys have the same feeling?
It depends on what exactly the kind of feedback is. If it's a complaint on something that isn't clear or not working correctly, and especially as DevRel, we really care about this feedback. Like that, there's a reason why they're giving it. They're not just like having a bad day and want to complain to someone. It's a genuine feedback that we should take an initiative and make a change and bring this feedback on it and see what can we do on our end to make it easier for them. Because if one person has a complaint about something, there's more than one person. There's probably a lot more, and not everyone is vocal about it. And I'm very grateful when someone's vocal about any kind of issues that they're having.
Yeah. Yeah, and a product isn't always going to be doing what's right. Like,
Yep.
you know, a product can be living for 10 to 20 years and have started in one place, and now, you know, we always talk about how fast development moves, right? Like, you know, the JavaScript ecosystem joke is there's a new framework every day. But to that point, like, your product has to keep pace with these ecosystems. And
Yep.
when you start to believe that your product fit has already been found and that there's nothing more to gain from the newer ecosystems because you've already found your niche, like you start to slip. So I think that like DevRel helps you keep the finger on the pulse of what is actually happening in the communities, not just what is happening at your enterprise level, right? And
Yeah, we
and
keep
kind
up
of
with
fixing that.
we keep up with any kind of trends that's going on,
Yeah.
what people are discussing in different developer communities, and trying to get ahead rather than falling behind and then and trying to catch up.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever had like any kind of challenges with this community related stuff? Because For example, on my side, I've once written like a piece of best practices or something about a piece of software I use. And the DevRel saw that and actually kind of asked me to change some things in the stuff that I wrote. And we have a great relationship, so I decided, you know what, I'll just write down that the company asked me to change it, but I did change it. Of course, this was still quite positive. But have you guys ever seen that somebody writes like some really bad stuff? Or is just like who has maybe a big community around them and then actually say things that are wrong? Like, have you guys had these kind of war stories, basically? Or are you lucky
I
enough that you work in a great place where this doesn't happen?
I have seen stuff like that from especially at a previous company, and that's kind of when our community manager slash marketing jumped in and that they would handle conversations like that.
Hmm.
But that was
I
a
mean,
larger company.
yeah, even with Cloudinary, there's all the time, you know, it's a large product. Number one, number two, when you walk into somewhere like Amazon, right? Like there's so many services,
Yeah.
there's so many facets in which you can misconstrue that you could put out content that generally hits the nail on the head but has a couple of misgivings, and really like that's not your fault. That to me is a product problem, is a documentation or a DX problem, and that's where I find like, you know, I don't think it's our job to come in and be like, hey, like you're wrong, you should change this. But educating, like finding
Yes.
a way to educate that person is totally within the
Yeah,
realm of our
exactly.
job, and it's totally something we've had to deal with. I've been with Cloudinary for about 8 months now, and we've definitely had, you know, certain reviews or things that were off, and honestly, those types of things are what help us drive change in the company, because maybe that's something that a lot of people get wrong, and
So
why is that, right?
So
Yeah.
if I look at it in the opposite perspective, I'm the one that put out a piece of content, and then some employee from that product posts a comment saying, "Oh, you're doing it wrong. It needs to be this way." Like I would feel slightly insulted
Ostracized,
if
right?
they like with them trying to sound smarter or look better. If they contacted me in private, I should have a way to be contacted and say, hey, I want to make some corrections and just, help you out. I'm not sure if you were aware of this. Here's some links and here's this updated information.
Hmm.
I'd be like, wow, thank you. Like I'll update this right now. I really appreciate that feedback. I wasn't sure on that end, but now I feel confident about it. Thank you.
And then
It's
we
like
can go
it's
back internally and be like, hey, this person went all through this stuff and couldn't find this answer. Why is that, right? And then that allows us to, so like, this is going to move into my other point. We are a bridge between teams. So you know how you had said, are we the referee between teams? No. We serve as the bridge. I want to be able to go and have a connection. So like my big thing coming in Cloudinary was, how do I start connecting with the other teams that wouldn't expect to deal with me? So that would be docs, training, and, we're in marketing. So in Cloudinary, we are under the marketing umbrella. So like when people think of us, they're just like, oh, like they're on the marketing team. But little do they know, like, we're using the product a bunch. We're building like open source tools on top of the product. Like we have just as much engineering know-how as you would expect a community member to have. And something that Duran always says, we're customer zero. We should be able to understand and know the product at customer level. So like that should be any DevRel. Like any DevRel should have a pretty working knowledge of their technology and be able to use it as a customer would, right? Because that's the only way that you're going to find these problems. So if you act as the bridge when something comes up online that's like that, and we can come back and be like, hey, this might be a documentation issue. Can we figure out in the docs where to make this clearer? And then documentation is like, oh, I didn't even think of it that way. Like, good catch. Like those are it's not so much as a referee, it's a bridge so that we can start moving our way closer to the product to where we can say, hey, when a new release is coming out, let us know first. This is how we should roll it out. These are how, let's get some beta testers. You know what I mean? Like we are the connection, the link between your product and the community. And anymore, it's not about okay, money is always going to be made at the enterprise level. B2B is always going to be a way that almost every company operates. But realistically, nowadays, your product is for software engineers. So beyond the whole B2B salesperson to salesperson, we need to be able to have those conversations about what this looks like for the individual developer. And if it doesn't look right for the individual developer, it's never going to skyrocket itself up to being an enterprise level tool.
Nice. Okay, so people listen. This is what it's supposed to be. So
It's persuading people to listen, because people don't
it's difficult.
they
This
don't
is the
know
thing,
that
right?
you are a subject matter expert enough to be taking that advice from. So
Yeah, so
it's really building trust.
okay, that's a
And
good in because go on,
and
Tessa.
when you work for a medium to larger company and then you're a developer advocate, you get feedback about something random. Maybe it's related to an educational course and I have to provide feedback to the education team. Maybe it's a comment about the pricing page. So I have to just jump and say, and then contact the pricing team. And they've never heard my name before, or it might be the first time I'm ever contacting anyone on that team, and then having to work with them and convince them to make these changes. So communication is a huge factor, even though
Yeah.
I just interrupted you.
No, that's fine because actually this goes into a point I wanted to ask about because it goes into career path, right? So when you're a junior developer, you can become a senior developer or you can become a tech manager, stuff like that. Of course, when you're a DevRel, there might be different levels a little bit because I know your boss is also essentially developer relations person, but like
Yeah.
above you. But would you think that would it be better if you are maybe already like in the community and doing a lot of work there? Like for example, my profile now, I'm like a director of web development at an agency. I do a bunch in the community. Would it then be better for me now to become a DevRel because a bunch of people know me already? Or doesn't that matter at all? Is it like, I don't know. It's so new to me, this job. I don't actually know what that means.
It wholly mattered for me. Like that was the only reason I even got the opportunities to interview was because I had a hold on the community. I ran React Adelphia for 2 years. I was like heavy in the Philly community, so I'm in Philadelphia. So for me, like it was empowering my city and finding ways to empower the people in my city that I was like really focused on. Not so much like what it could do for me, and then eventually I started talking to people who were in DevRel, and they were like, "You're literally doing the job of what a DevRel would be doing." Because I was putting out a lot of content for Apollo at the time. I was doing workshops. I had just become an egghead instructor, so like I was very involved in this kind of community aspect, and then realized like, oh, like there's a job that does that same thing. And even that though, like I had a few interviews before Cloudinary that even my experience in the community wasn't enough. It was like but I also think it's hard because there's no real junior developer advocate, DevRel.
Oh,
Like
you
that
have to be
doesn't
senior, I guess.
that doesn't
Yep.
exist,
So-
Not
So
yet. Not
Tessa,
yet.
how is
At
that
least.
for you?
It's going to
Apollo-
be a big thing in the future, though.
Apollo is actually planning on in their new quarter to start hiring junior DevRel. So it is going to become a thing, I think.
Oh,
So,
for sure.
Tessa, what do you think about that?
For junior DevRel
Yeah, for
roles,
example, or
so here's the issue with hiring junior DevRel roles. Right now, it's like for the last 5 to 10 years, it's still such a new type of position where tech companies are starting to realize like I can generate more revenue over time. I can become a more successful company if we have a DevRel team. A DevRel team does make an impact. Maybe you can't see that in your KPIs immediately, but it does make a long-term great effect. And but people want to hire experienced ones. They're looking to hire the first, 5 people, the first few people that are senior level or mid-level or above.
They want someone to direct them on what they should be
Yeah,
doing.
they don't
yeah,
know
they
what
are
to
in that
do.
stage, right? They
That
don't
is
actually know
definitely the
what they
stage
need.
most companies. They
Yeah.
know that every big company that's successful has a DevRel team, and they want one because it looks like they're doing the right thing. But I
love this.
don't think that there's an
So
established like
it,
normal.
if it's a random tech companies that just throws together a DevRel team, it's there's a chance it's going to fail. You have to have some like serious initiatives. You have to have a strategy that aligns with company goals. You have to have an actual plan going on, and someone that's leading you that understands what developer relations is, not just
Yeah.
let's just hire 20 people real quick and just okay, we
20
have
people.
DevRel now.
Let's hire 3 people to run an entire org. Like, that's
One.
really what's
I
happening
can
here.
honestly not even consider someone being junior or hiring a bunch of people who don't even know the product or tech.
I was thinking of a specific company who said we need to hire 40 DevRel in the next month, and I'm just
Whoa.
like,
Whatever that means. Yeah.
I
oh.
cannot
I
imagine how
think-
that would work.
I think too, you've also got to take into consideration the companies that are doing it really well, and the companies that are doing it really well, like Twilio, Auth0, I think does a great job. Netlify, obviously, I mean, just a powerhouse. Like And the things that they do right is instead of looking at DevRel as a umbrella under an organization, DX as an org piece is kind of the lead. So instead
Yeah.
of DevRel being under marketing, it's under DX, which then is a umbrella that handles all things community for developers, right? Like that's really the pinnacle of what DevRel is, and you've only seen a few companies do it. And I think what the problem is that it's hard to trust that creating a new organization is going to be a net positive. So a lot of companies aren't there yet. But the companies who have gone all in and done that sort of reorganization have done an amazing job. And it shows, because what happens is you start to see how many teams are adjacent to DevRel. And that is the
All.
training team. When you've got training, what if your training isn't relevant to today's ecosystem? Then what does it matter? And if you're not talking to the people who are in that current ecosystem, you're never going to know. Then you've got documentation. That's like the number one thing that I'm going to be asked about as a developer relations person, is people are going to be coming and asking about where in the docs they can find stuff and how they're supposed to do things. So I have to know the documentation really well, which means I'm going to be talking to the documentation team a bunch. So like having those types of kind of champions within those teams that understand that working with DevRel is a net positive for that team starts to show that DevRel as an organization starts to make more sense. DX makes more sense as its own kind of umbrella.
Cool. I like it. So now, because this job is still quite new, right? How are the salaries compared to, let's say, senior developers? Because I can assume, or I am assuming now, that DevRel people are likely more senior than a lot of developers because of their communication skills, all of that stuff, right? So how are salaries compared to, let's say, your previous tech jobs?
I could take that first.
Oh yeah, run with it, sure.
So I went from, like I said, I did UI for a few years. I was just like at the breaking point of senior. And my last job as a UI engineer was at Comcast. And my salary has stayed about the same, if not a little more because of perks as I've moved over. But I'd say anytime I've had a conversation about a job in DevRel from what salaries I had in UI, it's been relatively like the same. It's if not more, depending, because you are getting a bunch more responsibility, a bunch more singular leadership. Like I think there's a lot more that comes with going from a team facet where you're under a PM and you're delivering on schedules that your features need to be out on, to then going and having to kind of create your own version of what a win looks like and then expand that out, right? And then you're starting to think about like you said, what are the organizational like jumps? Like, is there a regular DevRel, senior DevRel, and then there's VP of DevRel, and then there's VP of like developer experience? Like I've seen all of these happen. And to our earlier point of like what a junior looks like, I think junior DevRel is really easy right now, because what junior DevRel is exactly all of the things that you see a DevRel doing. Content creation, understanding how to live stream. Like Tailwind just picked up Simon, and Simon is working on getting the live stream up and going, writing blog posts, getting answers. Like those are small facets of a DevRel that you can start to train somebody in that starts to handle. Like we have somebody on our team, Balaj, who does a lot of our ops, and he in turn, in helping us like organize and collect all of the data that we need to, is learning how to be a DevRel. He's learning how, what content looks like and what influencers in the space look like and things like that. So I think that very soon is going to become an established kind of route that you can start junior to mid to senior. It just really depends on like the outlook of how far you're willing to look. If you're looking small and a junior, you're thinking like content. When you're looking at that medium level, you're thinking like, okay, starting to bridge the gaps internally. What does organizing a community look like? Things like that. Then at the senior level, it's like, okay, what type of content is going out across the team? What type of wins do we need for the executives to start to understand our importance? Like those are the kind of trickle down things that you start to see as generalizations as to where a junior to a senior could start to differentiate.
Okay. You see, you're starting to get
Very
somewhere.
well said.
Yeah. So Tessa,
I was going to say the same thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
I looked in
word
your
per
eyes,
word.
Tessa, and I was like, I'm stealing
Saw
everything
it
she's
mirrored.
about to say.
yeah, I'm just going to quickly give you another question. No, just kidding. So how did you become a DevRel, Tessa?
I started as a web application developer. I just graduated from college and got a degree and certification, and built a bunch of projects 10 years ago, and then just started applying for a bunch of jobs and ended up being getting a salary offer to be a full-time developer to a ski and snowboard company.
Okay.
And little did I know I was the only hire, and they promised to hire a whole big team. That never happened. 3 years of being a solo developer, building out things that are so complex above my skill level. It was the most, I think I've lost so much sleep and wondered if I was going to have a job the next day, almost every day during all those years, because of all the feature asks that I didn't know how to do. It was just mostly a lot of reading, a lot of forum reading, forum posts, and getting more
Community
mentors,
engagement, I'm
and
sure. Yeah.
a lot, which is how I started getting involved in communities. Then I started like, I just feel like I don't have enough information in my brain.
Mm.
There's these programming meetups like I discovered, and I asked my boss, can you send me to some conferences? Like, I just need more information, and I see
Mm.
some talks at this conference that actually will help with the features that you're asking for. Then I started going to events, and then I went to my first conference, and they're like, have you ever are you on any open source teams? I'm like, what the heck is open source? Like,
Yeah.
do we're looking for volunteers. Like,
Yeah.
people volunteer. Like, why would I volunteer? Like, you know what?
Mhm.
I'll just grab your email, then we'll talk about it later. I didn't want to be rude. And I got convinced to join an open source team. 5 years later, I was still working on that project. So it was a lot of being part of communities, and going to so many meetups to the point where people are
Yeah.
asking, hey, do you want to organize this meetup and be part of the team? And I started running all these meetups and running my own meetups and then running my own conferences, and then started speaking at many conferences. And then I was at a bar drinking, of course. That's where you'll find me at most conferences, after hours, sometimes during. I'm just kidding. I never said that. Cut that out, all right? I'm just
The
kidding.
moment you ask to cut something out, it shall not be cut out.
and and his name is Mike Stowe. He's well known in the developer community, and he said to me, like, everything that you're doing now, like, you can be a developer advocate, like, or a
Mhm.
developer evangelist. The words are used the same. And I'm like, what is that? And I started doing research, and I'm like, oh, maybe I could be that job. Like, I'm voluntarily doing a lot of this work already.
Right.
I would be so cool to be paid for this, for
Yeah.
something that I love doing. And I'm like, okay, now what? I don't know what to do. So I reached out to some developer evangelists at Google and messaged them and saying, hey, if you have like a moment to like, would love to like learn how you got into your role. So I got a mentoring session by them, like, okay, create a personal site, start building your brand, start
Yeah.
writing blog posts, try to engage as much as you can on social media with, speakers and
Yeah.
influencers. And I just started focusing on that like every single day. And then I started applying for jobs and landed one pretty quickly. So that was a fast path to DevRel.
Yeah, for me that person was Jason Langsdorff. He literally
Yeah.
he literally paved the way for me to understand what, and that's why I take a bit of a different approach, I think, to DevRel than some do. I don't really write blog posts. I don't have a personal site, and I put out videos. I did a lot of meetup talks. I had my own meetup, so that helped. But he really started to teach me like kind of the counterpoint to what people start to think DevRel is, which is just the content, right? He's like, you have to be somebody that people trust. He's like,
Yes.
and at some point, if you're an asshole online, like, people are gonna know you're an asshole. Like,
Yeah.
there's no hiding from being a non-trustable individual. He's like, be as directly you as you can be involved in the conversations. And I'll tell you what, I followed that advice, and it's been the best advice since. And he's been such a great mentor and friend that that's what I tell people all the time. It's not always about having the thousands of followers and being an influencer. It's about being somebody that people think of to trust in a scenario. Like, oh, I have to put together a meet. Like, for me, it was meetups. Like, I was running a remote meetup before COVID. So like, everybody came to me, how do I run a Discord? How do I live stream my meetup? Stuff like that. So I was known and trusted for the thing that I was doing. So people started to trust me for more than that, and I continued to prove my trust in the community.
I really love how this are both your stories are slightly different than what a lot of developers do, right? They just go to work, they are in a team, they do some scrum, they complain, that normal thing. And you both actually explain that you make your own career. You have chosen certain things, and because of that, you are now super successful. And this is what I say in multiple videos of on my channel actually, that you have so much influence yourself over what you do. So I feel like I just got two mentors,
Oh,
potentially.
I'm always. I'll
Anytime,
tell you what, dude.
anytime.
Anytime. And to that point though, I was privileged in the fact that I had the extra time to do that. I don't have a family yet. Like for me, for Tessa, it's like she had a family and all of this stuff and was still doing it. So she's much more kick-ass than I am. I had all the time in the world because it was just me. Me and my girlfriend. I don't have any obligations that were stopping me. So
You reminded me I had a family. Shoot, I forgot to feed them
it's been
again.
years. It's been years, right? Yeah. But so to anybody that's listening, that's like, well, I just don't have the time for that. I don't have the time to put in. My best advice there is to just get involved in communities. Go lurk in the good communities that you found. For me,
Exactly.
I'm always going to say for everybody to join Party Corgi. The Party Corgi community is ran by Chris Biscardi. It's hands down the best community I've ever been a part of. It shows me new things every day. Go there, be a lurker. You don't even have to be involved all the time. Be a lurker. See what other people are
I'm a
talking about.
lurker.
It's not about being the loudest in the room. I know as being the loudest in the room, it's not always about being the loudest in the room. It's really about just being involved and being around the things that people. When you see other people doing things successfully, it motivates you to do things towards your own success. So just get involved where you can, and don't worry about the numbers on Twitter. I have like 2K followers, which to some may seem like a lot, to some may seem like absolutely nothing. To me, it doesn't seem like that big, and I don't want the 10K, the 20K, the 50K, because first of all, then that's so stressful, and everybody's gonna be in my comments yelling at me all the time. But to be that, like, I know that the people that do follow me are following me because they actually want to be there. They want to be engaged. They want to have communication, and to me, that's more important than being an influencer or any of the stuff that I feel like most people think that DevRel is like you're just a paid influencer, and to me, that's not it. Like, I remember actually one of the questions that you had sent over was, is it less coding? A lot of people look at DevRel like, oh, I'm not even going to be able to code anymore. Like, that is not the case. Like,
It's your choice.
it's your choice.
You work on what your strengths are, and
Yeah.
as long as the whole team is balanced,
Yeah.
you do what
Yeah,
you love doing.
you're gonna have people who like Tessa runs the MDE program. She's great at community leadership and things of that nature. That's what she focuses on. To me, you'll always see when I'm announced somewhere, I call myself an advocate engineer. Some people call it developer evangelist engineer, or there's a bunch of names for it. But to me, like, and I told Duran this right when I was interviewing, like, hey, look, like, I want to code. Like, that's what I enjoy doing. That's what I'm good at. I can stand up apps quick. I can build things fast. Like, I can learn new technologies. That's what I want to do.
So-
And since then, I've opened 2 open source projects while at Cloudinary that I've been able to work on and move through. So
One thing I have learned is you have to be very clear where you want your focus to be during your interview, or else
Yeah.
you're going to have like the wrong expectations and things can go
Yeah.
south quickly. So
For sure.
be very clear.
yeah.
Let those wise words be remembered.
Yes.
Because we are
Yes.
now.
Remember everybody.
No, I really want to thank both of you for taking the time. We are already like 35 minutes in. It's going to be a fun edit for YouTube. You know what? There's been so much golden nuggets in this. I'm just going to probably run the whole thing. I really want to thank you for joining me and taking the time out of your busy days. And yeah, thanks. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much for
Bye.
having us. See ya.
Bye.